Good morning, my Empowered Empath Warriors. Welcome to the Self Empowered Empath Podcast. Okay, so I just wanted to briefly interject here and just say that this podcast is actually, it used to be in the Superconscious Success podcast, and I decided to create this as its own individual podcast to be able to help go with the brand of the Self Empowered Empath. And so that you'll know that the content that you receive in this particular podcast is going to be related to empaths. It's going to be related to narcissistic abuse and energy vampires and codependency and powering up as that empath you were designed to be. So if you find reference within the podcast, or if you're wondering why it's sort of like, says something about Superconscious Success, that is the reason why. If you haven't yet checked out Superconscious Success podcast though, definitely go ahead and do that. That's got some great spirituality podcast episodes you may be interested in. This particular podcast, this is a podcast of mine and Terra Bundance's, and we are here to help you to power up as that empath you are designed to be. With both of us having struggled with codependency and other, issues being around narcissists throughout our lifetime, then it has really opened our eyes, and it's really something we are very passionate about. So I just wanted to interject here before we get into this episode, and I look forward to seeing you in future episodes. After a number of these are done, and I've actually converted them all across to the Self Empowered Empath, then we will start our official Self Empowered Empath podcast, where we will interview guests, but also we will do individual episodes, as I've just done one of my own on codependency. And this podcast is going to have either individual episodes with myself and Terra, or there's going to be joint episodes. There's lots of incredible content on its way for you. Okay, thanks so much for joining us today, and I will catch you later. Bye. Hey all, and welcome to the Self Empowered Empath of Superconscious Success. So today we're actually going to be talking about two emotions that are often felt amongst empaths, especially those of us that have experienced codependency and or narcissistic abuse of any kind. Now, when we're entangled in a vicious cycle with an energy vampire, we'll often be told by them that we're not there for them, or that we've done something wrong, or that it's our fault that they've turned out the way that they have. However, this could not be further from the truth. Gaslighting is a strategy that the toxic person will use to make you doubt who you are and the value that you have, therefore completely squashing your self-esteem and your self-worth. And even more troubling is the level of guilt and shame that this individual may put you through. Now, today, I wanted to take you through how these two emotions differ and the dangers that can occur from experiencing them. Firstly, it's important to understand that I believe that there really are two main states that you can be in. One is a state of love, and one is a state of fear. And this is really important when it comes to thriving as an empath. All other emotions are simply offshoot of any one of these two states. Guilt and shame are offshoots of fear. And so unfortunately, when we adopt these states, we avoid seeing our true self, and we also block off hearing the messages that are sent to us from source or from our higher self. Now, once we begin to understand that guilt and shame are in fact offering us no purpose, and that we are exactly where we need to be, we can start living in a place of forgiveness and also compassion, especially for ourselves. Now, before we go any further, my name is Jennifer Matthews, and I'm here to help you discover your true self, stand in your power, and live in true joy and fulfillment while moving away from toxic individuals. Now, let's delve a little bit further into guilt and shame. So guilt is an emotional state that occurs when you've done something you believe is wrong or others believe is wrong, and that you haven't met yours or other people's expectations. It's often accompanied by feelings of remorse, regret, and self-blame. And although it is an emotion that can help us to recognize our mistakes and therefore take responsibility for our actions, it does result in a lack of self-forgiveness and compassion, possibly leading to anxiety and a feeling of not deserving to be happy or not deserving to be successful. Now, shame, on the other hand, is an emotional state that will occur when we feel embarrassed, exposed, or unworthy because of our actions, our beliefs, or our character. Now, shame is even more dangerous than guilt because of the fact that it is internally based and is produced from a very low state of self-worth, humiliation, and inadequacies. And shame is particularly hard to deal with because of it leading to feelings of isolation and disconnection from others. So whereas guilt is actually occurs because of an action or something that happens, shame occurs internally based on how you perceive yourself to be, your own identity and your own self-worth. So as you can expect, shame can be a little bit more difficult to deal with. Now, if we can manage to truly recognize why we're feeling like this and put in strategies to help us work through it, then we can finally forgive ourselves. We can finally recognize our self-worth and also power up as an empath. Now, I'm going to take you through, firstly, 4 steps to eliminating guilt, and then we'll discuss a little bit more about eliminating shame. So the first step is to recognize the source of your guilt. So where is the guilt coming from? Is this guilt rational, or is it happening because of something the toxic individual said to you? If it is your child, maybe they told you that you were never there for them, and therefore you feel guilty about that. But of course, you know that you were there for them and that you did everything you could. If it was your parent, maybe they told you that you're not coming to visit them enough, even though you know that every time you called them, they told you they were too busy. Or maybe it's your co-worker that tells you that they lost their job because you didn't help them enough, even though you know that you're picking up the slack for them far too much. So figuring out the source of the guilt is the first step because it can allow you to put things into perspective. Once you recognize the source, it's time to take responsibility. Now, in most cases with these toxic individuals, the guilt will be unwarranted. You'll feel guilty based on something that they've told you. Remember that because of the constant gaslighting, your self-worth will be very low, meaning that it will not be hard for them to make you feel guilty. If you've recognized the source and have realized that maybe you did truly make a mistake, then try to fix it or at least apologize. However, if you've done nothing wrong, you simply need to take responsibility for allowing yourself to feel like this, put it into perspective, and make a commitment to yourself that you'll not feel guilty about the situation. Perspective is so important when it comes to this particular situation. Then once you've done that, watch how you talk to yourself and begin to show yourself a little self-compassion. Because when you feel guilty, it is very easy to be very self-critical and to judge yourself. This, unfortunately, only reinforces the guilt. So instead, show yourself compassion and kindness by being understanding, speaking to yourself kindly, focusing on your positive qualities, and also making sure that you are practicing self-care. And then finally, step number 4 is to forgive yourself. Now, this is absolutely critical if you're wanting to truly move away from the feeling of guilt. However, a very important caveat here, that if there truly is something to feel guilty about, remember that we're not put here on this earth to follow somebody else's path. And instead, we're here to follow our own path. You're in exactly the place you're meant to be, and the experiences you go through are there to help you learn a lesson and evolve. So unless you have actually hurt somebody else, then there really is nothing to forgive. However, if you did hurt somebody else, most likely unintentionally, forgive yourself for making that mistake, apologize for doing it, and then move on. Now, when it comes to shame, it's a little more tricky because we're needing to deal with years of programming and a lot of internal conflict that may be buried deep inside. Shame is an emotion that can be learned after years of being criticized by our parents or authority figures, or it can happen because you don't fit into the definitions of the norm. For instance, maybe you're dealing with a mental illness that's classified as taboo, therefore leading to feelings of shame. You may feel shame because you don't add up to what society expects of you in terms of intelligence, success, or beauty, and therefore you feel shame. Or you may struggle with personal shortcomings such as addictions that lead you to feel this emotion. Now, the best way to eliminate shame is to challenge negative self-talk, work on your own self-worth and belief systems, and recognize the value that you offer.